This tool could be a game changer for your shop depending on what you build. This may be one of the most controversial tools on as far as YouTubers go. Some say they regret buying a spindle sander. Some say, like me, this is one of the tools I'll never regret getting. This is the WEN Oscillating Spindle and Belt Sander. I've used the Ridgid version of this for a couple of years now and use it all the time. But I recently purchased this WEN because it's so much cheaper than the Ridgid, almost $130 cheaper. Can it compete with the Ridgid? Let's find out. First and foremost, the WEN comes with everything you need. It comes with 5 different sizes of spindles and the belt sander with the sandpaper included. You can pick up some extra later, but to get started, it's all included. It's easy to swap between the belt and the spindle depending on what you need to do. And it includes onboard storage for everything, including the spindle inserts, the spindles themselves, and the tools. So you're not going to be losing anything with this. You got everything right here together. This is a much smaller footprint than the Ridgid. We'll compare some other features later, but this is really good for a small shop. This does come with a work stop that you can add or remove really easily. You can use that with the belt sander. You can also use it with the spindle if you needed to, but it's really made for the belt. I rarely ever use that. With the belt sander, it has an adjustment knob so that if it's not tracking properly, all you do is twist that knob until it lines up perfectly. As you can see here, I can move that knob and make the belt basically go lower or higher on the wheel. And once you get it set right, it tracks perfect. This table is also adjustable. You can drop it down to 15, 22.5, 30, and 45 degrees. There's positive stops at each of those. Or you can just lock it in place at any point. That's great if you want to put a chamfer or anything like that on the edge of a board. And it easily locks back in place when you want it flush. It does have onboard dust collection, which I greatly appreciate, and that Festool hose connects right in there. And I will tell you, the dust collection is pretty good for a spindle belt sander. As far as spindles go, you get a 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and a 2-inch spindle that again you can swap out easily, and they all come with their own inserts to fit the size spindle that you're going to use. That's going to keep any small parts from getting down in there or getting jammed. I've been using this for the past few days, and I can tell you this is one of the best WEN tools that I've ever purchased. I've had their drill press for a couple of years. I've used their miter saw. I've used some other WEN tools. The overall fit and finish of this tool is one of the better, in my opinion, that they make. One thing I like about this spindle sander, it does have rubber feet on the bottom. It keeps anything from slipping and sliding around. It has a small footprint and it's quite lightweight to move around. So if you're in a small shop like me, this is going to be a nice feature of this machine. So why would you want a spindle or belt sander in your shop? For me personally, I love having a spindle sander because I use it all the time on smaller items, especially items that have curves and holes, things like that you need to sand. This is where this really shines. I use it on our trays that we sell, as well as mallet templates, mallets themselves. Also to square up the face of a mallet or any other board, this is a good way to do that. You can also sand radiuses if you need to round over something or the end of a board or something like that. It's just a good option for you. One thing I love about spindle sanders is, especially like these, they come with the different sizes. That way you can match up the size of the spindle to the basically the radius of the thing you're needing to sand. Like on my guitar tray here, I can pick out one that fits almost perfectly, and I can sand up into those parts and pieces to get those machining marks out. Now, if you build tables and large items and that's all you build, you probably won't use one of these. So I wouldn't recommend getting if that's all you build. But if you're building smaller items that have curves and profiles and things like that, this is one of those tools that really are a game changer for your shop, especially at this price point. Before we get to the comparison, I would like to tell you about our website, 731woodworks.com/store. If you go there, you can see that we have easy to follow build plans to help you make awesome projects. Super simple to follow step-by-step instructions. If you use the code SPINDLE, I'll give you 20% off any order, and that includes the already discounted plan bundles. Go check us out. Now, comparing the Ridgid to the WEN, they're very similar but a little different. Now, I've had the Ridgid for a couple of years. I've had this for a couple of weeks, so there's quite a bit of difference in length of time used. But I will tell you that I really appreciate the smaller footprint of this. It's lighter weight. The table is smaller. So you're getting 19 inches of width on this table. You're getting about 16 on this. So you're only losing about 3 inches. And the distance between the sander and the edge of the table are about the same. The Ridgid also has a T-slot where this does not. I have never used the T-slot on this. So it's really not a loss for me. As I briefly mentioned earlier, everything that comes with this WEN spindle sander has a place to store it. Like these inserts, they're stored on the side of this machine. The Ridgid are stored on the front. There's really no preference there. They're both stored securely and you're not gonna lose them. You're gonna be able to keep up with them, which is key for stuff like this that has small parts. And similar to the Ridgid, when you're not using the belt sander, it's stored down behind the machine in its slot. You just take out this insert for the spindle sander and put it back there where the belt sander was. So you're able to keep up with everything as you're using the machine. As far as power goes, there is no lack of power here. I was able to sand off a lot of material at one time with the belt sander and with the spindle sander, but the belt sander is where you're really removing material, especially when you're using something like 80 grit as you see here. You can create radiuses on the end of boards or anything you want because it's removing so much material. The dust collection is absolutely much improved and better on the WEN versus the Ridgid. The Ridgid dust collection sucks. It's just not good at all. Now you're gonna have sanding dust that gets on top of this. It's just the nature of the beast, but it does collect it better than the Ridgid. And one final annoyance that the Ridgid has that the WEN solved somehow, this nut on top that locks down your spindle or belt on the Ridgid gets stuck all the time. Sometimes I have to take a pair of pliers just to get it broken loose. The WEN has yet to jam on me, so that's a good positive there. The belt sander portion of this is a 4-inch wide by 24-inch if you need to buy a replacement. It's a good size belt. The spindle sander stroke rate is 5/8 of an inch as it goes up and down, which is a good amount, and it rotates 58 times per minute. So you're getting quite a bit of speed out of this 3.5 amp motor. If you're sanding curves, bevels, anything like that, like on Adirondack chairs or rocking chairs or small parts, boxes, mallets, trays, charcuterie boards, cutting boards, anything like that, this is an awesome tool to have. Now, if you don't need the belt sander portion, WEN has just a spindle sander that's a little bit smaller, has all the same size spindles for only 125 bucks. I'll link that one as well if you're not interested in the belt portion. But I really like having the option of having that belt portion for only about $75 more. If you buy a spindle/belt sander, pick up one of these sanding erasers. This will make your sandpaper last much longer. Super simple. All you do is turn your machine on and put this against it. It will clear out that gunk that clogs up the sandpaper. Also, you can use this on your regular sander to extend the life of your sandpaper on there as well. And they're only about $7 to $10 depending on which one you choose. The Ridgid does have a lifetime service agreement, which will sway some buyers. The Ridgid is a solid machine, don't get me wrong. I'll link to it in the description below as well. But if you're in the market for a spindle sander, you don't really care about the LSA, and you want a good solid machine at a lower price, about 130 bucks lower, typically, the WEN is a solid option. If you like this video and you want to see another WEN product that I really like, it's the WEN miter saw. Click that box right there. Clicking the box gets you the big old virtual fist bump. Also, if you want to see the Ridgid spindle sander review, you can watch that one right there.